Shout out to Malachi. How you doing, Malachi?
Could you please tell me your name?
Rebecca.Rabb.
How you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. Why are you here today?
I am here to talk about the Minnesota Office of Justice programs.
Okay. You and I got something to say podcast. So the platform is the voice of the voiceless, and we're going to give you the platform to bring us up to speed about that. So could you just explain it to us?
Yeah, so the Minnesota Office of Justice Programs is located in the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. We have certain programs and resources available to Minnesotans. We have the Crime Victim Reparations Program, which is a financial resource for victims of violent crime. We have a lot of grant resources. We have the Juvenile Justice Youth Office. We have the newly established Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Office. We also have the Crime Victim Justice Unit. So victims of violent crimes do have rights. So we also have that office as well.
Okay, so when you are all these offices working together, are there departments within? Is it a department within sub-departments? How's that breaking up?
So that's all those areas are within the Office of Justice programs under the Department of Public Safety. So that's one division within the Department of Public Safety, and all those areas work together.
And one director?
Yes, one executive director.
How many employees is?
Good question. I want to say there's approximately 50, maybe less. It's about around that. Yep.
Okay. Now I'm just gonna. What brought you into this work?
So I'm a survivor of violent crime. I grew up in North Minneapolis. Obviously, was surrounded by it. My family's been impacted by it. I feel like victims are frequently forgotten about. We really focus on perpetrators and making sure their rights are met oftentimes. We have a lot of people protesting to make sure that all rights are met, which is a great thing. However, in the process, we still have a lot of crime victims that need assistance and support. And so I think there's an opportunity to really support them and get information out. And I think a lot of it is in government. Typically, not every community is made aware of resources available.
So I got a couple of different questions. The first question is that you mentioned perpetrators. Mm-hmm. Now, perpetrators have rights. I see a conflict of interest, and maybe you have traversed that and being able to understand it. Being a victim of violence, mm-hmm. being in a space where you're trying to be neutral, just help everybody. How do you, and being in, coming from North Minneapolis, seeing what's going on with police and all this other stuff, mm-hmm. how do you traverse that? It's that dichotomy, that space, and still being there and still stay real to whatever you feel is real, whether it's victim advocacy or it's police brutality. I mean, where do you sit and how do you do that?
Yeah, I feel like it's all interconnected in different ways. I think you can connect a lot of dots to all of them. I think for me, I focus on what I can control, and what I can't control, I don't focus on. What I can control is what information victims get. What I can control is the support and making sure they can find support or get somebody in the community who can support them. So that's what I focus on. There's a lot of people who are already speaking out against police brutality, and I think that's great. There's laws, things are shifting because of that. I think perpetrators are getting, or people being charged with crimes are getting opportunities now to be heard and seen in a different light that maybe it didn't happen 10, 15 years ago. But my focus is really on the crime victims themselves, because oftentimes, we'll have a homicide and you'll have everybody in their face supporting them the first couple of weeks, but in a month, 2 months, and a year, where's that support and what does it look like? So are they getting mental health support, right? So it's bigger than just going over and patting them on the back saying, hey, are you okay? No, that may matter, right? But also, do we put resources and give them information on where mental health support is? You know, where is programming to help those victims? And that's just homicide. So then you look at it, if you're a victim of sexual assault, what support do you have? If you're a survivor of sex trafficking, what does that look like? So that's where I focus on. And that's it. In order to be, like you say, to be real to myself, is I really have to focus on what I can control, and what I can control is the information getting out there.
So I want to go back to how those resources look and how, you know, the mental health, and then, you know, victims, survivors of sex trafficking, sexual abuse, whatever. I want to get back into that. But before I get into that, just what strikes me, so are you at the rallies when African-American males are being shot? Do you show up there? Okay. And then how do you feel when you're there? Do you feel like, because Department of Public Safety encompasses a lot of things, and a lot of things deal with police officers and things like that. Do you feel a certain type of way about that? Like, maybe I shouldn't be here, or maybe I can do a better job. I mean, how have you felt the last situation we had with the police department when you were in that space? And how were you representing the police, or just there to be for support, or I'm gonna ask you the question.
No, that's a fair question. So I'm not a law enforcement officer. I've never strived to be a law enforcement officer. For me, I think any homicide, whether it's legally justified or not, there's an impact to a family somewhere, right? On both sides of the gun.
Yeah,
to be fair.
For sure, yeah.
Do I feel like I should be there, or what's appropriate? Sometimes I know to stand back, right? Some lanes aren't for me, and that's fine. Ultimately, I'm still for the victim's family and making sure they get the support they need if we can provide that support, right? So that's the big caveat for me. I have a lot of personal opinions that don't, I have to.
Right. Short. I just feel like, I just saw you at a victim, you just helped me with a situation. I'm being the victim of a situation. Then I see you at this rally against the police. To me, it would be kind of confusing, but I understand that for us, it does look different. Because you do want to be on both sides, because you doing the best you can. Now, okay, mental health. If I was a sex trafficking victim, what resources are there out there for me? As far as do I get free mental health assessments? Do I get housing if I'm a sex trafficking victim?
Yeah, so you can work with different resources. There's different resources for sex trafficking victims. And survivors. So with crime victim reparations, what that is, and I can kind of get into what that is and what that covers and who's covered by it. So crime victim reparations, if you're a victim of a homicide, they can help with funeral expenses up to $7,500. They can help with like a tombstone for up to $1,000, a headstone.
So again, like if I was shot, killed over Minneapolis, my people can request it, and where would they go? Would they go to the DPS, or would they? And it's a form on the website. Yeah,
so now I'll give you all that. So I'll go through kind of what it is and then where to find it and how to qualify. Because it's a process. It's still a government process, so it's not streamlined. It's gotten more streamlined the last 4 years. We've gotten investments and able to make it easier for survivors. But what they do cover is funeral expenses. They also cover any missed wages, or they cover like any uncovered medical expenses. So think ambulance, think rides. Oftentimes, like if you're stabbed and you have to get to the hospital, if you're hit with an ambulance bill later, they can help with any uncovered medical expenses. So anything your insurance doesn't cover. They can help cover with dental, if there's injury to your face and you need help with dental. They can cover mental health. They can cover mental health is a big one as well. It's also underutilized, in my opinion.
Like mental. So if I it's PTSD. So I had a situation where I was in a gun situation. I feel as though I had PTSD, and I wanted to go get assessed and get therapy for that. I would contact you guys.
Yep. So the process for that is there's an application process. There are rules and statute that have to be met in order for you to qualify for that. So
Do you know those?
Yeah. So you have to file a police report. So that's the big one. It has to be filed within 30 days. You have to apply for reparations within 3 years of the incident.
Okay.
So that's the other thing as well. I believe there is some room for that, especially in cases of child victims, assault victims. There's some room around that. Additionally, you have to file, so that once you file or apply for the funds, there's other rules that have to be followed. You have to cooperate with police. You can't be in commission of a crime. So, for example, if I approach you to rob you with a gun and you defend yourself and I'm injured, I don't qualify.
That's a question I had too, because I know there's assaults that go on in institutions or so it's in the county jails. Assault might occur, and then I reach out to you guys and be like, hey, I was just assaulted. I was the victim. Yeah. How would that go? And so I was just thinking about that as you were talking about it. So what's the disqual? Well, how would I, other than being a perpetrator of an assault, what other is income a disqualification?
No, so that the income doesn't make a difference necessarily. If you missed work and you're getting wages recovered, you actually have to be employed in order to have that happen. So I know there's some instances where people are in between jobs and they're hoping to get some type of coverage for that time, but because they're not employed, there's nothing to necessarily reimburse, if that makes any sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And then too, like another disqualifier, if you don't work with the police, if they're trying to do an investigation and you've filed a police report, you have to be able to work with them. So, for example, if you're well aware who your shooter is and you're like, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that is something to consider. They also look at sexual assault cases as well. And so what does that look like? So there are things we're working on in order to make those a little bit more streamlined. Yeah, but it just seems like that in itself, the fact that, in our community, North Minneapolis community, and I'm utilizing that community, urban community, snitching is an issue. So that to me would disqualify individuals right off the bat. Just because how you feel about it is one way. It doesn't, it's just the fact that it almost is a eliminator for a lot of individuals. Yeah. Because they feel a certain type of way about talking about that situation. And I will say, if you do get disqualified from anything, there's always an appeal process. So it is a board. It is a crime victim reparations board. So if you feel like you're unfairly being disqualified from it, you can go in front of the board. Who's on the board? So you have, and I'm not 100%. You do everybody, but you do have somebody who is in the medical field. You have, I believe, a police officer. You have somebody who's been impacted by violence, and then I want to say there's 6 spaces. I'm not sure the other ones. Okay. But typically a crime victim advocate as well. And I was like, when you were saying I get disqualified because I was unemployed during the time I'm trying to recover. Is there any grants or anything I could apply for so I don't qualify for income, but I do need income because I can't work because of the situation I'm in. Is there any monies available for me? So that's where you would really want to work with maybe a crime victim advocate, or look at, is it something that you qualify for disability? So those are the type of things you would need to look at. Okay. So we went through, is there anything specific that you want to go over that I might have missed that you think people should know about before we move on? Yeah, I just think as long as people know what's out there, right? So until you're in crisis, you typically don't know what you need to know, right? Mm-hmm. And once you are in crisis, it's hard to put one foot in front of the other, let alone remember, hey, there's this program out at this state. Mm-hmm. And so that's where it really comes down to community to really also help absorb the information. So when things happen, if they happen, we can be prepared. And you don't have to be an expert at it, but be like, hey, there's a program I've heard of. Hold on, let me contact somebody. So I think people really sometimes feel stuck on how they can assist families, and there is a way. And that's where I always say there's a way. And it's just being conscious of what's happening around and being aware of resources. Yeah, when I heard you speak a few weeks ago, I was just really interested because you were bringing information to me that I hadn't heard. Yeah. And even if I had heard it, I wouldn't be confident enough to convey that message to someone and have them go by. That's why I said it was important for me to have you on the show. Yeah. And like I said, I don't really necessarily reach out to individuals in your area, but I think that this is a it's no matter where you fall, this is definitely something someone should know. Now, how did you find yourself in
this area? Because you haven't been doing this for a long time.
No, I haven't. So prior to working in government, I was in corporate for 20 years. So, my leadership experience, everything like that came from corporate. The previous assistant commissioner and I worked together and grew up together in the neighborhood. And he had asked me to come over and initially work in...
Tom Roy?
No, he's now Chief Booker Hodges at Bloomington, but he used to be Assistant Commissioner Booker Hodges for the state. And outside of my 9 to 5, I was doing a lot of volunteer work. I was working... I do photos.
Thanks for saying that, because I forgot about it. But you did send me some beautiful photos.
Yeah, so I do photography, and after a homicide in our family, I really felt it was important that Black men see themselves in a positive light. Okay. I think when we take pictures in North Minneapolis, you get a lot of photographers coming in, and they want it grimy. They want it. Yeah. They want to see all the the
people on the corner,
the dramatics,
standing at the liquor store,
and not understanding even the corner store conversations. It's not grimy necessarily, right? So, but the way they can depict and edit a picture, it can definitely come off that way. So from my stance is I grew up in North Minneapolis, and I feel it was a very beautiful place to grow up.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's such a sense of community. Mm-hmm. So for me, and then we have this narrative out there that Black men aren't good fathers, that they're not involved with their children, and this is what's causing all these things. And there is some truth in that, right? Mm-hmm. That they aren't fathers, but that's across race.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I was going to get to.
So for me, it was really, I started a photo project with Insight News at the time to take pictures of just Black men and their kids, just interacting, like just having fun and showing a more positive light and more realistic, in my opinion, what I saw growing up. Right.
The 99% of the time, what's actually going on is that, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the 1% that they try to make it be what it is. But yeah, you were saying you were doing the photos.
Yep. Great, so I was doing that. I was in doing some contract work with Office of Black Male Student Achievement, which is now just Office of Black Student Achievement with Minneapolis Public Schools, doing the same thing, just taking photos there. But in this work, it obviously brings me into a lot of space that I'm allowed in. Yeah. Part of it's being from there. Part of it's just being able to build some of those relationships. So initially, when the former commissioner was here, he had a big investment in community spaces. And he, on our communications team, I was asked to come in and support community and diverse media, which at first I was like, I don't know, I don't want to work with law enforcement, which is my honest answer. But then when I realized it's not just law enforcement, right? And then also when I had the lens of, this is law enforcement, I don't want to be a part of it. I was also taking a seat away from a table that I think I belong at. Right,
exactly.
So I came in during this work. They also had me support the Office of Justice programs, and working with OJP, the acronym for it. I loved it, right? I loved it. So that's how it got me into this space. But because I can comfortably go back into my community, and that's the thing too, is no matter what I do at work, I always have to go home. Right. That's never lost on me. So understanding, yes, I have a seat at a table, but I'm representing people who may not have the opportunity to sit there. Right. And I gotta go home. This job may end one day, and I still gotta go back home to my family dinner and make sure everything, I need to be proud of the work I'm doing.
Yeah, they're gonna grill you when you get there.
Absolutely, they will. Absolutely. And so it's just making sure I stay grounded in myself. But that's how I got into the role. It really wasn't this straight trajectory that a lot of people maybe have had and dreams of being in government. For me, I was recovering from trauma myself. With gunshots in our own, gun violence in my own family. But it was also a way to really, it was therapy for myself, right? I'm able to help other families now who maybe have been through what our family has been through.
Are you still with the lens? Are you still doing photos?
Yeah, all the time.
Are you doing are you still trying to capture the same images, or you just are you working on a collection of photos to have what is the ultimate goal with that? Or
so I think with photography, it's always, with any art, right? You have hills and valleys. You have hills and valleys. My job right now does keep me pretty occupied, so it's hard to get out there and do photos the same way I was doing before. It's always there. Right now, I do find myself still, especially in the summer and the fall, going out with people and just taking photos of the good things that are happening. There's a lot of really good programs that are happening, and I take part in it. I always go and just try to show up. And I'll bring my camera to that. I wouldn't say I'm working on a project as specific as the Father project I was working on. And then also I have all my kids in sports, and so
Yeah. Are you doing photos for them?
Yeah, unpaid.
Well,
I'm just very clear, unpaid.
Yeah, I just.
No, it's so as a mom, but yeah, as a mom, I take photos all the time. So it's still recreational and a hobby for me, and I think it's important for everybody to have an outlet. You do work like this, and you're around. Honestly, what you see is the worst parts of our society. You got to be grounded that there's still better parts in our society.
Well, it's also good to do self maintenance. Get your check out and just make sure you're okay. Because what I find in these spaces is that it takes a lot out of you. It just like depletes you.
Yep.
And you don't really realize it because you're giving. You're constantly giving. You're constantly doing. And then you need to get back and take care of yourself. Get yourself back to 100 so you can help other individuals.
It's not lost on me though that I can go out even in the most horrific situations. I think I'm always humbled and thankful for when I go into community, the amount of people that show up. So even after these events or after anything really horrible that can happen, I'm always I always get really emotional by the fact that our community is still amazing. Like you still see people coming through and trying to help and make it better.
Yeah.
And I think that's still a lost story. So we focus on like, what's the response? What's this? What's that? And like, man, they don't talk about the random grandma that comes in with food just to make sure mom's eating.
What you're saying is just our ability to traverse struggle and actually makes. I mean, growing up in a Black household, poverty never seemed like poverty to me, and never seemed like I was poor. We have ability to make things that we. So yeah, it's just even being like I said, that's when you said North Minneapolis. I think it still is a great neighborhood.
Yeah, it's still community.
Yeah,
there's still some beautiful people there, and I would say that's the majority is beautiful people there and beautiful families and community. You see people doing wonderful things, opening up new businesses, expanding on their arts, and it's just so it's really beautiful. I think we do focus, and it's my job, right, to focus on victims and making sure they get support. But it's never lost on me the way the community comes through every single time.
Right. The last question I have before we go to break is that you talked a lot about the space. Now, you never used the space as being a color. You never said I only help Blacks. I never said nothing to that extent. But to be in the space that you're in and come from North Minneapolis, to grow up in that area, I think that Blackness or being opening your mouth about certain things and people looking at you, they would have a question like, how do you feel you're Black? Where are you at? So coming up, how did you again, you're in a space. How do you work with all those different things? Stay true to yourself, who you are as a person, but yet and still knowing where you come from, represent those people.
So I was always taught respect community, respect culture, respect people's space, right? So everybody brings something different, right? So I think like the buzzword is diversity and inclusion. We love to talk about that, what it looks like. And so I'm happy those conversations are happening. I think the reality is really it comes down to respect. You go into space, you respect the space you're in, you respect the people you're in, you respect the culture that they're in, and listen. So you learn to listen. I learned more about different cultures and spaces and people in this state in the last 4 years, and even coming up in a diverse environment. But I think the reality is you do stay true to yourself, right? It's not about me is the way I look at it. It's really not about me. It's making sure people have support, and their support may not look like my support, and that's okay. Right. So that may look different. But I think the reality, coming into this space, working in state, I bring myself, right? I bring my history. I bring my past. I bring my rights. I bring my wrongs. I've done them all. It's not been a straight and narrow path for me. I was not an honor roll student all through elementary and high school. I absolutely got in trouble. I was a teen mom. I was all those things. But then it's not lost on me that I'm in the position today because my community helped me get here.
Yes.
So I can't come into this space like, oh, I did X, Y, Z. Yes, I graduated college in my 30s with 5 kids. But that wasn't by myself. I had a community around me supporting me, willing to babysit, help me hold the baby while I'm trying to go take a test real quick. So for me, when I'm in the space, in government space, I recognize I'm in this space for a lot of people. My degree is not my degree. My degree is my community's degree because we all got it. Right? We all helped me get it.
That's beautiful. And that we are the voice of the voiceless. And what you're talking about is being that voice at that table, being someone that represents us at that table, who understands us at that table. With that, we're going to go to break and we'll be right back.
How you doing, Malachi?
All right, welcome back. Seth, Moy Prison Lawyer, and I have Rebecca with me from DPS, and she's been educating us on what's out there for people who've been affected by violence. There's different assistance programs. The biggest thing I thought was mental health, and I'm just going to have her just go over and tell people who are just tuning back in the process of actually connecting with them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the telephone number and the website on it so individuals can reach out and get that information. But could you just update us, give us that one more time?
So the Crime Victim Reparations Program helps victims of violent crime with some of the financial impacts of that. So what they cover is any missed work, are they wages, they help with funeral expenses, they may help with dental assistance, they help with mental health as well. So that's the big piece. We want to make sure people know that there's mental health available. And it's not only just for the immediate victim, but with mental health, that also covers parents and siblings as well.
Okay.
So that's something to really take heed. And I think especially when we come to like funeral assistance, the family will come in looking for obviously that immediate assistance, and then they, in a couple of weeks, they still need help.
Yeah.
Right? So it's understand too, the cases, once you've applied, your case is always open.
Is that is that forever or okay?
So you may, with mental health and with grief especially, you may need that immediate help. But then sometimes with grief therapy, it's like clusters is when you need.
Yeah.
But then you'll have triggers happening, anniversaries, court dates, things like that come up. Where you need that help again, you can always come back.
Okay.
Especially as long as it's related. Yeah, as long as it's related to the incident.
The only thing, another thing I thought about is when I was talking to you on the phone, you said we're statewide, not just St. Paul, not just Minneapolis, and I thought that was great because I was just thinking like I knew you weren't, but then I was just, but when you said it makes sense because again, here's a program that's statewide that nobody really knows about. That we're trying to get out so everybody knows about. So interesting stuff that you said in your narration about being a single mom.
Oh, I'm not a single mom though.
No. Initially, you were
I was a teen mom.
Teen mom.
And I actually married my kid's father right out of high school.
Okay, I'm sorry, but teen mom.
But even we were divorced young. We had 2 kids, and I would say my benefit is when I talk about community. Is even when I got remarried later, my son's father was always involved.
So was a co-parenting.
Yeah, he's a great co-parent. I may not stand him for a lot of different reasons, but he's a wonderful father.
And here we go. That's an aspect in the Black community that people need to understand is that, and I'm willing to challenge anybody that they want to like the label or the poster child for the deadbeat dad is the African American male, but I know a lot of African American males who have stepped up and went beyond taking care of their children, and they're not. Again, it goes back to your photos. They're not being photographed. They're not being talked about. You know what I'm saying? It's just those knuckleheads. So.
No, I had a great co-parent experience. I can't complain at all. My children's stepmother, she was amazing. She stepped in and helped. When you're at work and you get that call from school, like, hey, you gotta come get so-and-so, they're sick. And you're like, oh. Yeah. She's like, oh, I got them, no worries. I was really fortunate where I did not have to single parent at all. I really did have their father is a great father. I openly say this. I've talked about this a couple of times, but I make a really great mother. I'm a great mother. I'm a horrible father. There's certain things I can't do, and that's where dads come in.
Well, I just think that it's that yin and yang.
Yeah, I just think we're going to parent different, and I think that's what makes fathers fathers and mothers mothers. And
right.
I think there's parents on both sides that have to step up for different reasons, and that happens. And I'm always a huge advocate for them, and I'm incredibly impressed and proud of them. But for me personally, I haven't had to. And as far as co-parenting, I loved my kids more than I hated their father, so it made it a lot easier.
Well, so for you just brushing over. But see, we have an episode coming on later on tonight talking about vindictive moms and deadbeat dads. Mm-hmm. But it's not to sensationalize that conversation. What it is actually to figure out what's really going on, because you make it seem like, I mean, most people are talking about how I can't see my child, but I've been paying child support, and how he doesn't pay child support, but he wants to see his child, or how he's with this female and she's trying to be the mother of this child. So you have all these different things that's going on. It's never that cut simple.
Well, it is. What you just explained is they don't have control.
Okay, yeah.
On both sides. That's what it comes down for. I don't have control with my child at your house, and I went through that. Right? So when they're at their father's house, I have no control what goes over in their father's house. True. I had to learn to trust that their father could keep them safe. And I think people are like, well, how could you say that? Because you had children, didn't you trust them? Well, I trusted what happened in my household. Right. As a collective. Control again. But again, it was a control. Yeah. But when they're at their father's, what can I control? Nothing. But I have a different take on that. I do appreciate your positioning on it. But when I got locked up, so I do 8.5, 9 years, and I was in my children's life early on. See my children born. I was there through only time I left my children's life is when I went to prison. So when I got to prison, I was just really worried about getting out and having my daughter pregnant, having my son selling dope, whatever. Just have all these bad things happen. It's going through my mind. But what I was able to do is that when I was coming up, I feel like children are like plants, and if you actually fertilize them young and do the right things with them, then even if they do come off that path, then they will know the right way to get back to it. So if you just input it early. So to go back to parenting, it's that, like, I know that if I was with you, if you were going to be, or how you were going to treat your children and what was going to go on. So I just feel like that control is something you have to learn to give up, but you sort of know in your soul that this individual is going to do right. Yeah, so with or without me, right? There's so many things can happen. Like I could get in a car accident on the way home, and this man's not responsible for our children. Is he equipped for that? Right. And so the question always is did I choose a partner that's equipped for that? That's a great point. And so I did. Right. I did. And so I feel comfortable in that. I also, like I said, and I say so, I've loved my children way more than I've ever hated their fathers. I don't hate their father. But even at the worst, when going through a divorce is not fun. Right. Yeah. Never. It's gonna never. Would not recommend if you can avoid it. Never. But ultimately, I love my kids more. So right. So if it ever felt fair, I probably knew I was probably not doing things right, because the only person who should feel fair to is the kids, because we uprooted their life, not the other way around. Yeah. See, that's so. I mean, that's a mature statement to make. It takes a lot. I don't know where you're getting it from and where it's coming from and who's telling you. But I mean, a lot of times people bump their heads over and over again to get to that particular understanding. So it's great that you guys found it, and that children definitely will benefit from it. And I just know that coming up, I always felt as though my parents should have took that same approach, that I didn't ask to be here. They brought me here, so they should have a little bit more understanding for the situation. But that's here nor there. Coming up in North Minneapolis, going to school over north, you don't live over north anymore, but you still have family over there. What's the biggest change that you've seen over there? Because you've seen it from start to finish. What I would say finish, but it's but from the times they say it was so great over there, you could ride your bikes here and there and all that other stuff. I think the big shift is honestly the housing market. So when that bubble burst and everybody lost their homes, we saw vacant homes for the first time. That didn't exist, right? And so I think there was that. I think there was also a narrative when I was in high school, even success and this is what they taught us: success was getting out.
Oh, North Minneapolis.
Just out, just in general, get out of the city, don't need to be here, go away to college, don't come back, right? That was the narrative, but understanding we were raised around doctors and lawyers and teachers.
Yeah.
And they lived in our community, so if we
predominantly.
we move and don't come back, right? And we should move, right? We do want our kids to go away to college and or find their craft or whatever it is and come back and bring it back. That's what we should have been told, but that's not what we were told. We were told success was the suburbs. We were told success was in a fancy car and success was all these things, but really it is coming back. And so I think being in a position where we were raised around, even though it was poverty, there was not everybody's parents were well off, but you were raised around a lot of community and community spaces. So for me, I felt like I feel like the kids just don't have that visual in front of them all the time,
right? And
they don't see that action. You don't see how many times on the weekend do you see people working on their cars in the alleys and things you just don't see that anymore, right? So it's just I think there's. I think that's a shift, but I really think it came with the housing. So when the bank,
I think what you're saying in a roundabout way is community. Like ask someone. I was talking to a gentleman who was a bus driver, and he said he made a point about community, and our community's been turned into hoods, and all these different things other than community. Nobody's calling it community anymore. And I look into even the neighborhood I grew up in. The biggest thing is community's been removed. People don't feel like the person next door can say anything to you. With back in the days, that person next door could not even they could whoop you.
Yeah. So when I walked home from school, so we didn't, if you didn't live within a mile of the school, if you lived within a mile, you didn't get a bus. Right. So where I went to school, I was right on the cusp where I probably needed a school bus, but they didn't exist. And so when you're second, third, and fourth grade, there was no fear for me walking home because I knew a family on every single block.
See, that's community.
So even though I'm by myself, I was never by myself.
Never. That's community.
And so there was an incident one time, and I mean, a couple of times you just run to the right house you knew, right? And that it was always a safe space.
You know what that reminds me of our conversation we had, and you were telling me about we should need the police in our community.
No, I feel like community really, so, we can talk about police and we can talk about reform and we can talk about those things, and I'm not against those conversations, and I'm happy people are having them. But my stance really is why did we call 911 in the first
place?
place?
We shouldn't even need it.
It typically wasn't because of something that happened in that moment. It was something that happened 5 years previously. So as a community and collective, what do we do to support our kids when they're in trauma? Mm-hmm. So and that's where I feel like, it may sound bad to say, but even how do we keep women and children safe? That was a real thought at one point, and that's not a thought process anymore. Mm-hmm. And so if you can keep children safe, can we protect them from themselves as they get into teen years and get into trouble potentially? Mm-hmm. So and that's where my stance is on it. So it's not that I try to divert the conversation against police and things like that. I really feel like it is a community response, and I feel like it's a community responsibility to take care of each other.
Right, because police are just they're reactive, not proactive.
So police have two jobs: it's to respond and to deter. It's not to prevent.
Exactly,
that's not their role.
And that people have it misconstrued, thinking that somehow they're going to come in and do whatever. I mean, if that does happen, it's a rarity. And where I'm from, the gangs were predominant, but gangs were established because of just what you're saying. It was just it was necessary for the community. They did a lot in the community. They weren't as they've been portrayed. They didn't come up. They weren't established for what they right now. It's a travesty of what they lost the track that they were on. But they were a response to certain things in our communities. What college did you go to?
College of St. Catherine's in St. Paul.
Oh, you spent some money in St. Kate's.
Yeah, I'm still paying for that.
St. Kate's is super expensive.
I went to the evening weekend program though, so at the time, all the online colleges that exist right now were still new.
Right. Yeah.
And so I went, and it was I was a mom and I was a full-time working mom. So how do you do school? Where does that fit?
Right.
It doesn't. However, they had a weekend program where you went every other weekend for all day, it was each class was 4.5 hours long, or you could go at night, and then it shifted to a in-person online, so it was kind of a hybrid.
Okay, yeah. So that was the evolution of like you said, the hybrid online come in. Did you ever think about not finishing?
All the time. Every time I had a baby. All the time I'm like, I can't tell you, I cried more in those years in college than I cried any other time. And it's not because the work is hard, it was the work, it was the load. Yeah. So it's school, it's, my job didn't stop, bills don't hang up because you gotta pay for due.
You're trying to do assignments and get cut up in readings. You got to read. You need to.
And then real life happens. Kids get sick. You have family members that pass away. You have tragic events. You have good events. You have weddings. You have all these things that are happening.
I don't feel like doing it today.
And you have some days you just want to lay on the couch. But if you miss one class, it's 4.5 hours. How does that work to you? So you can't get that time back. So you really forced your way through it. And I did it with 5 kids. To be very clear.
Superwoman.
But at the same time, my older boys, they're 25 and 21 now. I feel like they sacrificed the most because I couldn't go to all their events. They were wrestlers. I couldn't go to every wrestling match. They're on weekends. I was at school. So that's where, thankfully, their father and stepmom were 100% there. But it does take away, so taking that, I had a different path that, I was a teen mom, so there was no one way to college right away. I tried. I took one class and I couldn't do it initially. But I kept going back. So, I got knocked down a lot. I did not graduate in 4 years. I graduated in 6 or 7.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, it was 6 or 7 years it took me to go. But I had one professor at St. Case's All Women's College. And on my worst days, I would have women in my face like, look, there's a little girl somewhere begging to go to school and she can't. And so you just sit there and you're like, okay, I'm representative of all those little girls that can't. Globally, right, who can't go. Right. Or even here in the States who can't go.
Right. So. Was it a program, was there a grant program that you were in, or what was going on? What made you go to St. Case? Because that's just...
It was the only weekend program I could find.
Oh, okay.
At the time.
Yeah.
So now there's all these other options. Everybody's online. There's all these things.
Whole online courses. They have specific courses, and then they have the hybrids. Then they have the whatever. But because I did my degree too, and that's why I asked the questions I asked about.
No, it's expensive. I've taken. Obviously, I qualified for some, little grants here and there. Most of it was student loans, and then the rest is just scholarships if you can find them and dig them up. But in your 30s, it's a little harder to find those. They don't really, adult learners don't really have the same advantages as young people. You're right. Definitely, it's not the scholarships are, some of them are age based. It's right out of high school. If you were whatever, I don't know. And who I was at 18 is not who I'm who I was at 30.
Right.
So so it took me a long time. I'm happy I went. I'm grateful I went.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't like that bill that comes up every month, but that's fine. That's the tuition. But
well, did you? They got that financial aid stuff.
Yeah. So, and I do qualify for.
I got my aid passed it supposedly, and so
we'll see.
Yeah, see how much.
Same case, the same case.
Ooh, yeah. I know already when you said that.
And it is interesting. I want to go back for my master's.
What are you going to try to get a master's in?
I don't know yet. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
But then also, where can I go that's not going to cost me
$1 billion. I was looking at Metro State for their advocacy and political leadership program, and I got into it, but I didn't know with the masters that there was no real financial aid. You had to take out loans. So I applied, and this is a whole nother thing for individuals who are trying to do their masters. It's not the same process for financial aid. You're going to have to take out a loan, and then the loan maybe will cover everything. But the process is not as streamlined as it is for undergrads.
No, it's not. And I get it. It's just, so it makes it a little bit harder. But I would like to go back to college and get my whatever degree next. I don't know what that is. My degree's in business. I never in a million years thought I'd be doing this type of work.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So now it's I don't know, what do I go back for? If you would have asked me 7 years ago, I was absolutely going back for my master's in organized leadership.
Oh, organized leadership.
Right, so that was going to be that's what you do. That's what you do in business. That's what your degree's in.
Where did you mentioned that you were in the corporate world? Where were you working at?
I was in the financial sector.
Oh, so okay.
So I was
accountant.
No, I did contract work. So I was I did HR work for a little while. So I worked in HR, but I also did vendor relationship management. So basically, when you think all the work that gets sent overseas, so I would oversee those contracts.
Oh, okay.
And then the employees that work out of the country as well, and in the country.
Did you get burnt out with that and decided to make the move?
No, so travel is hard. Everybody thinks traveling for work is really exciting.
Yeah.
It's not.
Are you traveling overseas, or are you just traveling through the States?
Both.
Okay.
You do both. And you think like, oh, I'm going to be going to Phoenix and LA. No, I was in Minot, North Dakota. So I was in Des Moines, Iowa.
There's all the boring places in the world.
And it's a culture. It's a culture there. It's a culture shift for me being there. So it's different. So there was that. Also, corporate burnout is real. Like it's just like any job, right? You get burnt out. But I constantly was going back and forth with, what am I doing? Like, is this purposeful work? Do I feel like I'm being fulfilled? And I didn't always feel that way.
How long after the degree did you have that feeling? Like, how long?
I was feeling that before I even got there.
That's what I was saying. So I felt like when I got my degree, I felt so like my deal was just taking back ownership of my time. I just felt like since I had my degree, I didn't want to go and give them 8 hours of my time for any amount of money. And that just transferred to a lot of different things, but it did wake me up to just being in a different space. But it brought me over here to actually saying, like, not only do I don't want to give you my time, I also want to do something beneficial.
Yeah, so like I would say for me, like I had my volunteer work, I had my work pictures, and so like that
fulfilled that.
Yeah, there was a lot of void being filled. My leader at the time, he's actually the reason I went to college.
Who was your leader?
His name is Yusuf Bilal. I love him, by the way.
Okay.
He was my leader at my first corporate job, and he moved on. He's like the boss of everything now. And then when I came to this last corporate job I was in, he recruited me to come there. And I started going to college because of him.
Okay.
Initially at my old job. And I'm like, I can't do this. I don't have time. He's like, you have to figure it out. And it was amazing when I went to the separate corporate position at the new job. I graduated under him. So it was a really full circle moment.
Yeah, just fruition, just that's for him to speak it into the future, and for you to fulfill that.
He was super supportive. I mean, leadership matters, right? Like leadership really matters. And he was amazing at, even at my worst, still seeing me at my best and like helping me navigate those years. And so
that's, you can't, at my worst, see me at my best.
Yeah, so he reminded, and I think it's hard.
Affirmations. Yeah.
I think it's hard in this climate too, just to see the best in things, even in ourselves. So when you have somebody that can, it makes a difference. So I got to graduate under him, and we're still really great friends. He's amazing. I like him still talk all the time.
You mentioned some troubled times that you had coming up? Did you ever get a felony? Did you ever go to jail? Mm-hmm. You just ran in?
That was sheer luck.
Okay.
To be very clear.
Okay. So you were hanging. So as you were coming up and working, you're still hanging around the wrong people, or just?
No. So for me, when I got pregnant with my first son, I was 17. Everything stopped. Mm-hmm. So for me, everything stopped. Like it was that easy.
Maturation.
Yeah. So I missed the entire club scene. I missed my 20s. Ooh. I didn't go to my first club until I was like 27, 28. I was a mom.
Okay.
Like, I was dedicated to make sure my kids had a different life than I had. And I didn't have a bad life. My mom was struggling. She was a single mom. We gave her the business. My sisters and I did. Mm-hmm. So, I was just sitting there thinking like, this isn't going to be my kid's situation if I can help it.
Okay.
So I worked really hard. Their dad worked really hard. I couldn't afford to go to the club and go get drinks and whatever, because I'm like, I got to feed these kids. They're always hungry.
You know, they would have been buying you drinks off. They would have been straight.
But it's one of those things. So for me, I didn't get in trouble again after that. Like, yeah, my temper is still my temper. I'm going to take the girl at the hood. I'm still Northside at heart. Like, don't get it twisted. And
you're going to pull the earrings out?
And there's some people who have seen it, because, when you work in this role, people don't think they can talk to you anytime.
Yeah, definitely.
And you have to remind them, like, look.
Yeah, hold up. Wait a minute.
Like, I don't do that. And that's all I say. And I would say people have been really respectful. But every now and again, you have to gentle reminder, like, look, that's not what we're going to do.
One more question before we end this. I know it's been great talking to you. I listened to you talk about how you were going to school, bettering yourself, but unable to go to your son's wrestling matches and things like that. My comparable experience is like, I went to all my son's football games until I went to prison, and then during my prison, I wasn't able to make it, and this really affected our relationship. Did your sons ever have a problem with you not showing up
No, my sons gave me grace. I feel like all 5 of my kids give me grace. Even in this job, right? I'm not home all the time.
Okay.
So I think they gave me a lot of grace. Maybe in the moment it hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But trying to celebrate as many. I couldn't miss anything else, right? So if I missed because of school, it didn't matter if I was sick, broken leg, whatever. I'm going to that next match, right?
Right.
I would be there. So they knew I would show up for any other moments that I needed to be. But they gave me a lot of grace. And then the most beautiful, my favorite picture I have of myself and my 5 kids is me in my graduation cap and my kids with me, because that is all of their degree. Like
it's a community. It's the community. Everybody's
my
there.
My baby supported me through that. I mean, you get in writer's block. What do I write about? You look at your kid, look at you 100 things to write about, right? So so there's that. So I would say my sons were really amazing. They gave me some grace, definitely. And also the high school boys just kind of suck. I mean, they're not fun.
Right.
But after we got through that, now it's just been really, my relationship with my boys is really beautiful. And my oldest son's having his first baby. So is this what's making your grandma? Is this your first grandchild? It's my first grandchild.
Oh, so you're ready to spoil
boy, another boy.
Okay, here you go.
Another boy.
Back at it. We
were really hoping for a little girl.
You see it.
We were really hoping for a little girl, but my son's dad, they're like generations of boys. There's no girls in their family. Okay. So I knew it was going to be a boy. I was hopeful for another girl.
Okay. Thank you for coming to the show. I appreciate it. We've been planning this. I mean, we've been on the phone. We've been texting. I mean, I've been trying to catch her. She's a busy lady, man. It's kind of hard to catch her. If you catch her, you better hold her down. But I'm glad she came through and helped us with this information. I think I'm looking at it more as a public service announcement, but I also want to know, I think it's very important for people to understand that there's individuals like yourself behind all this stuff that's going on and that care, that's part of the community, and it's very informational. So
thank you for having me.
I'm so grateful that I ran into you by accident, and I want to, whatever else is coming up, just let me know, and I'm definitely gonna have you back.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We're out. SAF Mo, going to smoke. I'm out of here.
Ron being in the middle's in the back.
What's up? Good job. Thank you. Let me get her coach right there. Rebecca's coach right there. Let's grab her coat. Thank you. I like the boots.
Unplug it. Never mind. I got it.
They got no grip, I'll tell you that.
I saw that.
As much as I love Tim's, man.
I remember when those first came out.
Yeah, I like Tim's.
Yeah, they're the same. Let me see. They got
these have heels. These are the ones with heels. All my other ones are the flats.
Yeah.
I got bubble
back
on.
on. So you're not a Jordans. You're not Jordans. You Timbs.
I have one pair of Jordans, and I didn't even buy them thinking they were Jordans. They were just a shoe I like. But we do a lot of MMIW work, so it's an American Indigenous woman. So we go.
I forgot to talk to you.
So we go to a lot of stuff that you got to wear red.
Oh,
that's like the color, the red dress, everything. And so it's outside a lot. So I was like, oh, they got a pair of red sneakers. I was so excited. She's like, Mom, they're Jordans. They're red. They're all red. You don't see that. But, yeah.
So I said, first thing I was thinking, I was like, well, ask her how do you in this, because I'm thinking she's mixed. Mm-hmm. So I'm asking her in this position, how do you go through the blackness and all this? How are you getting challenged in the blackness? She's like, I'm white. Like, what? I'm like, what? I'm like,
she don't look like it. She don't sound like it.
I'm telling you,
So my family, half my family is Indigenous from overseas. Okay. So it's not native to here, it's native overseas. Mm-hmm. So there's that. But I was raised by my mother, but my sister's father, who actually stepped in and raised me, he's Jamaican.
Okay.
So he's black.
Yeah. All right. It's all good. I mean, it's all. It's not a thing. It's just I felt like I was just.
I can hear the urbanness in her though.
Well, that's North Minneapolis though.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because I had to teach myself how to talk because I talked how I talked in the community. So even when I first started my first corporate job, I didn't talk at all last year because I didn't know how to speak without speaking like where I was from. Right. I knew my vernacular, not everybody else.
Well, and then you come into corporate, so you're in your 30s coming into corporate, so you've already you have that in you. You're not coming in and fresh out with it. Yeah. So yeah, I can see that.
So I'm not fresh on the streets anymore, but it took a while.
Y'all want to take some pictures?
Oh yeah.
So
I'll call you back. We're in the middle of recording.
Take it with my camera.
No, use the other phone, Chris.
Oh.
Use the other phone.
Oh, okay. God, you should,
Here, we can just use my phone. And I'll send them to you one at a time so they don't,
I wanted to go on my Instagram and my
What's your
TikTok.
Instagram?
I got something to say. Let me.
something to say.
You don't have to keep. You can let this go.
Right.
But tonight, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna have to. I want to go straight on my Instagram, do lives, so I can go straight up with this episode. It's gonna be episode like 50 something. My phone will come on. It just cut off. Was it dead?
Yeah, it's 5%. It was 5%.
It just died.
It just died just now?
Yeah. What you guys got going on after this?
I'm fortunate though. I came from a super diverse background. So
What do you guys got going on after this?
oh, my son's baby shower, and then my grandson's baby shower, and then I hope to God that's it. We're praying for nothing else. We're always on the weekends just with. This is like our first weekend with no basketball games. Well, my son's like, my youngest son's up there,
It's like super dead.
And then you're doing one on
Yeah. And well, I wanted to try to get you to get on that one, but I know your time was so pressed. I didn't want to put. That's when
I have a lot of opinions on it. It's hard because I think I don't know, like the way the law is written and everything. We're set as parents to not get along, right? So it's constantly who's the better parent.
Well,
That's the dialogue. Who's the better parent?
I feel like it's coming up like I came up. It's hard to find, like, if the relationship goes bad, it just goes bad, and the children get lost. They become.
So I'll tell you, it's deeper than that.
Tell me now.
So here, look at it from this perspective. It's been advocated to have kids without being married, right?
Right.
It sounds very old-fashioned to say that.
Yeah, no.
But the reason why you should wait until you were married to have kids is the law is not set up for you until you are, right? So as a father, you have zero rights at birth unless you are her husband.
Well, stop for a second, because that I want you. Maybe you can explain this a little bit better for me. Is because it wasn't like this when I had my children, but now they're saying like it's a biological father and then it's the actual father of the child, so that when you sign on a birth certificate, like with me, it was only signed on a birth certificate, I'm the father. Now it's like you can have a person who donates,
So how it is now is it'll ask me, the mother, is this the father? Are you getting divorced? Are you whatever? Are you married to somebody else still? Because if I'm married to somebody else and I'm with somebody new,
that's my child.
Right.
If you're married to me and you had a child, in the state of Minnesota, I was told that child, because we're married, it's my child.
Not unless she checks the box. There is a form that's on the recognition of parentage where the mother has to actually check the box and put that information on there. Who enforces that, right?
Did you tell her what the conversation?
We've been there. That's what we talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I told you.
So this is why, like, even with my son, like, who's having a baby, he's not married, and I was in his tail over it. I'm like, look, this is why you don't have babies until you're ready to have marriage, because you have no legal rights to this child.
Unless she says.
At birth, she can say you can fill out the recognition of parentage and everything. It doesn't matter. You have no legal rights to a child unless you're married. You have to petition. You have to petition for legal rights.
Okay, so let me explain my situation. Now I had a child. I was in prison at the time. They contacted me and said that I had a child and they wanted to because if that doesn't make any sense to me, because how am I not, you're telling me I'm not responsible for the child, but they want me to collect child support.
Child support, yeah.
So when I was in prison, they were like, hey, this female is claiming that you're the child's father. We want to do a DNA on you. You did DNA on me and said, I am the father of the child, and they're going to put my name on the birth certificate of the child. But they never got back to me on it. So you're trying to say because we weren't married, she could just deny that and said this child is someone else's. And I don't want him on the birth certificate.
So if she's saying, typically, so how it works, if you want any type of services for the child, so like let's say she needs some assistance, state assistance.
That's what she was doing at the time.
Yeah, you have to say who the father is and make an effort to identify.
And that's what they were doing at the time. They found out that I was.
So even if she doesn't go after you for child support, though, at that point the state will.
But I was locked up at the time, and they were like, because the baby was born during my incarceration, they didn't come after me
until after. Well,
when I get out, I'm thinking they are going to come after me. But lo and behold, she's saying the child, although the DNA came back, she's saying it's someone else's. So that goes back to me, what you were talking about. Like, did she just say someone else was the parent of the father of the child?
So there is a way, so it depends, right? It's 100% depending on her and what she's saying. But if she decides, so as a mom, right, I can say, I have the right, right? You don't have the right. I have the right to say, like, he doesn't have to be involved, and I relieve him of financial obligations.
Mm-hmm. So
I can only make that decision, though.
Okay. Please tell me your name. Rebecca.Rabb. You said you hate your phone.
You don't like hearing your voice, did you? Me neither.
No, she laughs. She'll impersonate me, too. She impersonates me when I try to get...
Do you want her to be on camera right now? You might want to step back.
You going all your TikToks and your Instagram?
She's not on my TikTok.
Because everybody your age has a TikTok.
Like it's too bright in the background. Turn it. Yeah, there you go. Like this.
Hold on. All right, thank you. Enjoy it. Make sure you wear it.
On TikTok.
With the school and stuff. I know they'd be like, I ain't wearing that to school.
They're gonna be like, I never seen that. Where you get that sweatshirt from?
Does it got the photo? Let me see if it got the picture on it.
Yeah. Match your shoes.
Yeah.
No, so
Okay. You're all good.
I'm sure we'll see you around again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
How did y'all bump into each other? Like you said, I heard you saying in the video that it was a mistake that we met. Like
we met at Mickey Frosting.
Oh,
when she was the first speaker.
Yeah, so Mickey had called. Well, I called Mickey and like, are you guys doing anything? So every time there's something kids involved, it's typically it's a high touch sensitive one. So I do typically reach out right away for those ones.
I wasn't paying attention because I was more on the camera and trying to focus on
So I went out there, but I was just gonna come bring some things, and then he was like, "Hey, can you talk?" I'm like, "Mickey, I got braids in my hair and sweatpants on." I'm like, "I'm on my way to my son's football game," and he was like, "No, just take a second." And I'm like, "All right." And I couldn't see but then I'm like, "This is a room full of people. This man really got me out here." So it was kind of fun, but yeah, I'm at Mickey's all the time, and a couple other places in Ramsey and St. Paul specifically. I spent a lot of time at HCMC though, actually in Minneapolis.
I seen him on the news the other day. I was just randomly watching the news.
He's still in business, but he's one of our grantees as well.
Oh, for real? So you is that part of that sheriff deal that he's part of?
No. So I'm not anything sheriff of Ramsey County, but
because I know I've seen him at the Jazz Fest walking around with a sheriff shirt on.
No, we're not sheriff. His is just around. I think this is youth work. I don't remember what his is specifically, but I want to say it's around crime. We do grants for crime prevention and intervention with youth. So I'm sure it's probably one of those.
Do anything with media? Do you guys?
No, so your media is a tough one because most of the and I only know it's just my dad has insight. So the issue with media is most government divisions, so the public safety, Department of Health, so they all have their own communications team.
Right. So
then question is, and where I started challenging them like a couple years ago when I came in, was how do you guys invest in diverse media? So there was a ton that went out around the time of COVID, because COVID funds actually gave funds to do diverse media specifically.
Well, and they don't really have a social media presence.
It's by choice. Because part of it, so even DPS, it's really not about us as employees, it's about the community. So what information do we put out for community that's not, nobody cares what Sarah in accounting is doing. They don't care. I don't either, to be honest.
Right.
But, how can you uplift community without it in different ways? So DPS does have a platform. We have, but under us is like State Patrol, BCA. They all have their own platforms. They all do their own things, but it's not super active like you see like police departments. Like if you go to Bloomington, they have their own things.
Yeah, Hennepin County. Well, Minneapolis Police.
St. Paul PD puts out a ton. Theirs is actually a lot more active. So from a government perspective, we just don't. Just because for us, politics are still at play. You know, we're 100%. I'm under the governor. Governor could be mad. I talked to somebody and then, wow.
Do you know a young lady named Amber that stays in Minneapolis?
Amber Jones, who works in government?
No.
I know a bunch of Ambers.
Well, she lives in North Minneapolis, like in the 50s.
She got dreads?
Huh?
She got dreads?
No, but she's like, just like you. Like, I had this random thought in my head, like, because, like, you said you didn't identify as African American, and
she's not.
I know.
Yeah, but
Amber,
I thought that she was.
I thought Amber was too, because Amber is like the same tone and everything. But her mom is black and her dad is white.
Okay.
And I just had this random thought, like you told me she from North Minneapolis, but Amber knows how to turn it on and turn it off, like the white side and the dark and the black side as well.
I will tell you though, it is interesting coming up how I grew up. Where you're accepted versus where you're not, especially in me, in my space, how I present. I am not accepted in the community at all. To be very clear.
Just because you're vernacular, or just because?
Everything. Part of it is just, like I've always been a little bit different. Like, I'm an artist at art too, so like there's always kind of on the outskirts of things.
That's another.
Well, just even your dress.
But so how I dress, my nails, my earrings.
That's a whole other conversation. That's a whole other conversation.
Your swag is not white American. You know what I'm saying?
But culturally, right? So take color versus culture. Like culturally, I dress how I was raised, right? So like
we all do.
And I'm one of 5 girls, and I dress like my sisters, and we all dress just alike. Right?
Like, but the biggest thing you said is we dress like what we seen around us as we were coming up, and I still dress like that. I mean, like even like we were just talking about the photographs and all the other stuff, or the Polaroid cameras. But I mean, starter coats, Jordans, we wore all that. Yeah. We come up in that. So now they're making it come back, but it was something that
but now white culture is picking up on some of it, so it's interesting. So it's interesting. Like her friends that are white are a lot more accepting of I think black culture because they're intrigued by it.
Right.
But like the adults, not accepting.
This is one of those moments where you said the camera needs to still be rolling because we're getting some stuff.
No, I'm getting ideas for shows.
This is a whole other conversation. Like I just said, this whole other conversation that we need to have, and it needs to be expounded in a round table discussion with other people.
And like for me, when being in the community all the time in different places, black community is always more accepting.
Of course.
So my dark skinned black father, I mean. When people are like, "Oh, that's your daughter," he's like, "Yeah." Say something different, right? Yeah. And bigger than that, he's not. I honestly, we joked about it. I didn't know he wasn't my dad, and so I was much older because like he never taught me
anything,
and nobody in the family, not even him, my grandma, aunts, uncle, they never was treated any different. Yeah. So I was just a little white one, right? I stood out in pictures, the family photos, but it. But to me, it was always acceptance and love. You don't get that in my work.
Unconditional.
It's very different.
Unconditional.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. You can walk him down?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
It's nice to meet you.
She's on the 14th.
No. It's
only a middle finger. It's only a middle finger. She's seen the middle finger.
Tell me when you come down. We're going to do it. Let's do it twice.
Okay. All 3 y'all. 1, 2, 3.
You're Ron. What do you got to say about SAS most and white MFers?
I don't give a fuck what anybody says. It's America, and you should be able to do it and say what the fuck you want. God bless America.